Welcome back to Strongman Personal Finance. Wow! Well, despite my hyperactive intro, we actually have a very serious discussion in this video. We're going to talk about the extinction of the Italians. I don't know, I'm part Italian. I'm not going extinct, right? And some concerns that Elon Musk has about low birth rates. Now, this is a very sensitive subject because, you got feminism and, child-free. You don't have to have kids. And, people want to live their lives without children. And there's alternative ways to enjoy yourself. And you don't need kids to complete you. There's all this crap out there. Okay? But there's a massive consequence to society kind of embracing a concept that you don't have to have children. And that never made sense to me, personally. Because if you think about it, how does the human race survive? Well, you have to breed. You have to reproduce, okay? And if you don't have kids, you die off. Now, that doesn't mean everybody has to have kids, but when it becomes a societal norm that you have, one kid per family or even none, and that's okay, there are some issues that are going to crop up in the future, and they're actually massive issues. One of the issues is not extinction, but mass depopulation. It's actually not a joke, and you can actually plot out the numbers. And if you look at some of the projected declines in populations of these countries that have low birth rates, it's pretty terrifying. And it's not something that you can make up, because you can literally calculate, like for example, you could say, okay, each couple in Italy has one kid. Well, 2 people have 1 kid. If every couple in Italy had one kid, the Italian population would shrink by 50% every single generation. The population would eventually shrink by 50% every single generation. And if you think about it, well, one kid, they have a child. So in 2 generations, you've gone from 4 people to 1 person. So if you're not popping out kids left and right, or at least having roughly 2 kids per country, you're going to have mass depopulation. And it's pretty scary, okay? So Elon Musk sees extinction of Italians on persisting low birth rates. He warns against dangers of population collapse, and he believes Italy's population will drop by 20% by 2070. Now, how does this apply to stocks? Well, number one, what causes economic growth? Well, there's several factors. You have productivity, technology, but a big part of economic growth is people working and generating goods and services. Now, some may say, oh, well, robots are going to save us. Robots will be so productive. We don't have to have a large population. Maybe that's true. But at the end of the day, you have to really think about the implications of what could happen if you have a country that has a lot of old people that aren't very productive and very few and fewer and fewer and fewer young people propping up the economy. Because old people don't spend as much money as young people. So you have to consider this when you're looking at investing. Now, he said, Italy will have no people if these trends continue. Okay, that's not true. So Italy, if you look at Italy's population, in the last century before birth control, really, it's all birth control's fault. Italy had a pretty rapidly growing population. And then people started taking birth control, women's liberation, all that good stuff. There's consequences to it. What happened is their population peaked in roughly 2016. And now they're projecting Italy's population is going to drop from 60 million people down to 40 million people by 2100. And you can literally plot this out. You can literally do the math. It's not hard. Every couple has 1 kid. Well, your population is going to shrink. And you're going to have a much, much bigger part of your population that's older. Now, that is going to freaking wreck Italy and their stock market. Because if you think about it, there's not that many workers. They have massive government debt. I mean, how do you pay for old people? Mostly government programs. The future is kind of looking dark for European stocks, at least. Do I think Italians are going to go extinct? No, I don't. Even if the population drops to 15 million people, or 10 million people, or 5 million people, at some point there's a lower limit. Like people will start having kids again, hopefully, or something like that. But you really have to consider this when you look at a country. A big part of investing is looking at demographics. Now, this is around the world. So people will say, oh, you invest in China, and China has, a demographic problem too. That's true. But guess what? China still has a massive freaking population, a lot of which is moving from poverty into the middle class. So how do you measure birth rates? Well, you can look, and I actually pulled this data. So this chart may be a little weird, but you can see they have the country here's, all the countries here, and then they have this number right here in column C. So column C is roughly how many children per women are being born. So you look, and there's a lot of doom and gloom about, certain countries, mostly European countries, Japan, even a little bit in the United States. But if you look at countries in sub-Saharan Africa, there's no population problem, okay? You can see in Niger, every woman on average has 6.82 kids. Angola, 5.83. So while some parts of the world are being depopulated, other parts of the world are not. They're actually exploding, okay? So you can actually use this list as kind of a snapshot to see which countries you may, consider investing in or not investing in based on demographics. So it definitely plays in. And if you look at Taiwan here, that's a deathly low birth rate. Basically, every couple in Taiwan is having one kid. So 50% of they're declining by 50%. Each generation is 50% smaller, which would lead to a massive population decline unless things change. So you can see a lot of the more developed countries they have really low birth rates. And that may portend very negatively for their stock markets. We'll see. Now, the sustainment birth rate is 2. So you can see 2.1. So you can see Kazakhstan, their birth rate, their population will each generation will be roughly the same size. But if it's below 2.1, you're going to start having larger and larger populations in the older age bracket, which is a massive drag. So I actually agree with Elon Musk that some countries may be facing massive crises, issues. But when it comes to the human race is not going extinct, number one, and things can change. You look at Africa, their population is massively exploding. As a matter of fact, look at the growth of the labor force, population age 15 to 59 in millions. You could see basically every single country, they had a growth in the working labor force. Then their birth rates fell as they became more developed, more access to birth control and, liberalism, stuff like that. And now you see their population start to flatten and decline. But you look at Africa, kaboom! Their population is exploding. Now, I don't know if this is going to continue. I don't know. But as things stand right now, it will be a very African-dominated world by 2100. So I would not be concerned about the human race going extinct. But, there may be some issues with, mass immigration, tensions in societies that aren't used to having diverse populations, stuff like that. But the human race is not going extinct. So Elon Musk, he has this fear factor crap, and he's right. I mean, Italians their birth rates are freaking low, extremely low, and they will have a massive decline in population. And that portends very negatively for their stock market and for Europe as a whole. But for the world as a whole, I wouldn't worry about it. Now, we can actually look at Japan, too. Japan is also facing the same issue. They had a massive explosion in population, in the 1900s, and basically they stopped breeding. I mean, they still have some kids, obviously, but you could see the projection for their population. They're going to go from 125 million down to 85 million people in the next, 78 years. And most of those people are going to be old. So you're going to have this very tiny portion of the population working and paying taxes, and you're going to have all these freaking old people just sucking them up. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this impacts the stock market. Japan has had a very crappy stock market the last couple decades. I mean, it has not performed well. And you can also see Japan has massive debt to GDP growth, which is a drag on the economy because they have a lot of people not working. Well, how do they pay for all their old people if they generate debt? So it's very interesting to see how it plays out. Maybe, robots will, become mainstream and, they'll take over most of the tasks and the human race won't need to, work as much. That's possible. But at the end of the day, when people say, oh, there's overpopulation, there's too many people on the world, It's BS. Most countries have low birth rates, and their populations are about to start massively declining. It's a freaking liberal myth. You don't have to have kids. Population. There's too many people in the world. It's BS. So, I don't know what to say about the stock. I have a negative feeling about stock returns going into the future, just based on this whole population issue. But you never know what new exciting technologies can come out and potentially make us more productive. So, we'll have to wait and see, but at the end of the day, to mitigate risk, you want to save as much as you possibly can. That's really the only answer I can give you. I would not expect 15% compounded returns forever into the future, especially with these kind of crises happening in Europe and China and, even the United States has low birth rates. So I guess we'll have to see now, won't we? But the Italians aren't going extinct. They will have a massive population decline, but they're not going to just poof off the earth, I can tell you that. So, maybe. We'll see. Anyway, that's it. Hope you weren't scared too badly. Have a wonderful day. Cheers!